Hello everyone. In this video I want to talk about the iris recognition technology. Let's first see what is the iris and why iris is the best biometric trait for human recognition and identification tasks. Iris is the annular region of the eye responsible for controlling and directing light to the retina. Iris is bounded by the pupil, the dark area of the eye, and the sclera, the white area. And as you can see, is a very small area. The width of the iris is 12 millimeters. And it contains a very rich texture, and this texture of the iris is stabilized during the first 2 years, and this texture carries distinctive information useful for identification. The iris patterns are unique. Even the irises of identical twins are different. And also the iris pattern of the left and right eyes are completely different. So these are the advantages of iris for recognition. It is stable over a person's lifetime. Pattern is epigenetic. So this type of pattern are not genetically determined. Iris is an internal organ, so it's highly protected and rarely damaged or changed. Iris pattern possesses a high degree of randomness. We can capture the iris by non-invasive method, and the template size of the iris is very small, so the image encoding and matching process is fast. An iris recognition system block diagram. In the first module, we should capture the iris image by using some near-infrared sensor. We get an iris image. After we perform the iris detection and find out that there is an iris in the image, we can also perform iris liveness detection in order to be sure that the iris image is captured from a real person and it doesn't provided by an image to the system. Then the iris image quality should be evaluated, and if the image quality is good enough for enrollment or recognition, we can continue to the next step. Otherwise, we come back to the image acquisition step and take another image from the subject. The next step is iris localization. We should find the real boundaries of the iris and segmenting the iris pattern from the pupil and the white area of the eye. The next step is iris normalization. We convert the iris pattern from this annular region into some rectangular format. And after that, we perform some image enhancement techniques to make the iris pattern more clear. And the next step is feature extraction. We convert this iris pattern into some mathematical representation, and we store this iris template inside the iris image database during the enrollment. During the authentication process, all of these steps should be performed, and we compute the iris template for one test image, and then we compare this iris template with all of the other templates that we have in the enrolled database, and by some matching procedure we determine the input iris is belong to one of the member of the system or it should be rejected. Examples of using iris recognition system in real world applications. For example, in the airport, the officer who is responsible for visa application and registration can take an iris pattern of a passenger and check it against a blacklist or dangerous persons who are enrolled in the system to find out that the passenger is eligible to enter to this country or not. Or in another airport, all of the check-in procedure is performed automatically by using iris recognition. As you can see, the iris camera and sensor is far away from the passenger, and it automatically captures the iris pattern of this woman, and all of the check-in procedure will be performed automatically. This is another example of iris recognition system in residency permit applications. Also, during the First Persian Gulf War, the US forces used iris recognition in order to identify the individuals who connected with various activities. This is another example. In 1984, a photographer took an image of a girl in Afghanistan, and 20 years later, a charity organization decided to help her. So they tried to find her by using her iris pattern. Since the first image quality is very high, they can extract the iris pattern, and by this iris pattern, they've successfully found her after 20 years. As you can see, her face is completely changed during these 20 years, but her iris pattern is stable. Another application of iris recognition systems is depicted in this image. In some workplace or working environment, it is impossible to use other type of biometric traits to authentication the workers. For example, in coal mine, you cannot use fingerprint or face recognition system to identify and authenticate the workers, because in most of the cases their face and their image is covered with some black materials. So they use iris recognition in order to let a worker to attend into the working place. Type of iris capturing camera. In all of these devices, the user should stand for a while in front of the camera sensor, and the distance between the eyes and the camera sensor should be very small. These are another iris capturing devices, and in this image you can see how much is the distance between the subject and the sensor. This is another example. And this one is an example of iris on the move system, or walking through iris identification system. In this type of system, the user can walk through some corridor and the sensor capture the iris pattern without need to stand in front of the sensor for a while.